could just say, what do people laugh at? And if you have enough data to represent that phenomenon, you might be able to, weigh the features and figure out, what humans find funny and what they don't find funny. The machine might not be able to explain why the human finding it funny unless we sit back and think about that more formally. I think you do a combination of both. And I'm always a big proponent of that. I think, robust architectures and approaches are always a little bit combination of us reflecting and being creative about how things are structured and how to formalize them, and then taking advantage of large data and doing learning and figuring out how to combine these two approaches. I think there's another aspect to humor though, which goes to the idea that I feel like I can relate to the person telling the story, to the person telling the story. And I think that's an interesting theme in the whole AI theme, which is, do I feel differently when I know it's a robot? And when I imagine that the robot is not conscious the way I'm conscious, when I imagine the robot does not actually have the experiences that I experience, do I find it, funny? Or because it's not as relatable, I don't imagine that the person's relating it to it the way I relate to it. I think this also, you see this in the arts and in entertainment, where sometimes you have savants who are remarkable at a thing, whether it's sculpture, it's music, or whatever. But the people who get the most attention are the people who can evoke a similar emotional response, who can get you to emote, right, about the way they are. In other words, who can basically make the connection from the artifact, from the music or the painting or the sculpture, to the emotion, and get you to share that emotion with them. And that's when it becomes compelling. So they're communicating at a whole different level. They're just not communicating the artifact. They're communicating their emotional response to the artifact. And then you feel like, oh, wow, I can relate to that person. I can connect to that. I can connect to that person. So I think humor has that aspect as well.
So the idea that you can connect to that person being the critical thing, but we're also able to anthropomorphize objects robots and AI systems pretty well. So we're almost looking to make them human. So maybe from your experience with Watson, maybe you can comment on, did you consider that as part, well, obviously the problem of Jeopardy doesn't require anthropomorphization, but nevertheless.
Well, there was some interest in doing that. And that's another thing I didn't want to do, because I didn't want to distract from the actual scientific task.
Science.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, humans do anthropomorphize, and without necessarily a lot of work. I mean, you just put some eyes and a couple of eyebrow movements, and you're getting humans to react emotionally. And I think you can do that. So I didn't mean to suggest that connection cannot be mimicked. I think that connection can be mimicked and can get you can produce that emotional response. I just wonder, though, if you're told what's really going on, if you know that the machine is not conscious, not having the same richness of emotional reactions and understanding, that it doesn't really share the understanding, but is essentially just moving its eyebrow or drooping its eyes or making them big or whatever it's doing, just getting the emotional response, will you still feel it? Interesting. I think you probably would for a while. And then when it becomes more important that there's a deeper shared understanding, it may run flat. But I don't know. I'm
pretty confident that it will. That majority of the world, even if you tell them how it works,
won't matter.
Well, it will not matter, especially if the machine herself says that she is conscious.
That's very possible.
So you, the scientist that made the machine, is saying that this is how the algorithm works. Everybody will just assume you're lying and that there's a conscious being there.
So you're deep into the science fiction genre now, but yeah,
I don't think it's actually psychology. I think it's not science fiction. I think it's reality. And I think it's a really powerful one that we'll have to be exploring in the next few decades.
I agree.
It's a very interesting element of intelligence. So what do you think? We've talked about social constructs of intelligence and frameworks and the way humans kind of interpret information. What do you think is a good test of intelligence in your view? So there's the Alan Turing with the Turing test. Watson accomplished something very impressive with Jeopardy. What do you think is a test that would impress the heck out of you, that you saw that a computer could do. They would say, this is crossing a kind of threshold that gives me pause in a good way.
My expectations for AI are generally high.
What does high look like, by the way? So not the threshold. Test is a threshold. What do you think is the destination? What do you think is the ceiling?
I think machines will, in many measures, will be better than us, will become more effective. In other words, better predictors about a lot of things than ultimately we can do.